Good morning, Cobb Democrats. I'm Jacqueline Bettidapour, the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Committee. And along with the CCDC Steering Committee, we welcome you to our February virtual Donuts with Democrats. Our featured guest today is Cobb Sheriff Craig Owens. We'll also be joined by Representative Erick, the chair of the Cobb Legislative Delegation, for a legislative update. So February is Black History Month, and here in Cobb, we're not just celebrating Black history, we're making Black history. As the third most populous county in the Metro Atlanta region, Cobb went blue once again this cycle and delivered ever-increasing margins of victory to elect the first Black woman vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris. Cobb delivered victory to Georgia's first Black US Senator, Reverend Raphael Warnock. We elected Cobb's first Black sheriff, Craig Owens, and Cobb's first Black commission chair, Lisa Cupid. We elected 3 African-American women to the Board of Commissioners to form a new Democratic majority on that board. So we celebrate these firsts, but that cannot be the end of the work before us. We can add all these firsts to the litany of Black historical figures we flip through in these 28 days of February every year, mindful of not reducing this to a performative exercise where we check a box and think this absolves us from grappling with the systemic racism still pervading this country and this county. Black history is American history, and to quote a line from The Hill We Climb, written by Amanda Gorman, being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We step back into that history every February with Black History Month. We highlight the contributions of African Americans to this country's rich history and contextualize America's original sin, the enslavement of African people within that history. But how do we repair it? Black History Month is not just a time to celebrate Black Americans who have paved the way. It's also a time to consider how we can create more justice in our daily lives and institutions. There is no doubt throughout the process of creating a more just society, elections matter. And with this last election, we have made Black history and ushered in a new era for Cobb County. But winning these elections, although important, is not sufficient to bring about the change we seek. The hard work of governance and reform has already begun with the Cobb County Commission, with the Sheriff's Department. We'll hear more from our new sheriff in just a moment. And with the Cobb County District Attorney, we're hoping to hear from Flynn at the March Donuts with Democrats. And although I'm confident all these leaders will rise to the challenge, they cannot do the work alone, and we cannot expect immediate results. It will take each and every one of us to ensure and support them in their success, our success, really. So during Black History Month, let us pause and reflect on the work left unfinished. Let us commit to elevating marginalized voices. Let us question norms and notions of what just is and move to support justice. Again, the words of Amanda Gorman. And there are more elections we need to win. We need to keep voting, and we need to keep pushing progress forward. So I wanted to introduce briefly people that are joining us on screen today. I'm joined on screen today by a group of highly committed people that will push progress forward. So the Cobb Democrats Executive Committee, we have Essence Johnson with us today, our first vice chair, Matthew Yarborough, our second vice chair, Eustacia McLeod Carter, our third vice chair, Sharon Marshall, our treasurer, and John Monahan, our secretary. We're rounding out that executive committee with our district chairs, Lisa Schnur, our District 1 district chair, John Southall, our District 2 chair, Joanne Wood, our District 3 chair, and Hassan Hassan, our District 4 chair. So we're also joined today on screen by our Governor's Club and Chairman's Club members. So I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to those members' support. and encourage everyone to join the Cobb County Democrats. And you can view that membership information and join us by visiting our website at cobbdemocrats.org. So at this point, I'd like to acknowledge some special guests that have joined us on screen. Do we have Victor Jones with us today? Victor, are you there? Victor is the president of our Young Cobb Democrats. Do you have any announcements you'd like to make today, Victor?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Just wanted to let everyone know we're having our monthly meeting on February 24th at 6 p.m. where we'll be having Sheriff Craig Owens and Melody Maddox on to just discuss overcoming barriers in employment and some racial stereotypes, just also talking about issues facing the Black community and relationships between police and the Black community and what kind of their goals are to help mend those. Also, just a little side note, we got new t-shirts with the Whitey Cobb logo. It also has You All Means All with Cobb County on the back. If you become a member, you can get a free t-shirt. So head on over to our website, whiteycobb.org, and become a member. Thanks, Jackie.
Great. Thank you, Victor. We're also joined today by the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Ben Williams. Ben, if you'd like to make some announcements.
Good morning to everyone. Jackie, I don't have an announcement to make, but I'd like to use the few minutes to make a presentation.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much. And in as much as we are in Black History Month, which kind of synergizes some attention to the accomplishments of Black folk in this country, let me invite those assembled to join me in a Sankofa moment. By that, I mean the presentation that I'm making today was scheduled for March 14th, 2020, which would have been the date that's set for our annual gala that we have done for a number of years here in the county. At that meeting, we were scheduled to recognize folk in our community who had demonstrated leadership and stewardship. In March of 2020, we selected our leader. I've got to acknowledge myself as being a part of this group, our leader for her leadership. And I heard a good deal of the conversation before we came on air. And it seems as though something that's emerged very clearly is leadership is fine, but leadership in the absence of courage is nothing more than a tinkling cymbal. So Jackie, I want to present to you from the Cobb County Southern Christian Leadership Conference, this plaque. Hopefully you'll hang it someplace so that it will remind you of your executive leadership. But in addition to that, of the courage that you have shown as the occupant of that position. So once again, congratulations to you. And sometimes we have to go back in order to move forward. So thank you for joining me in this Sankofa moment.
Great. Thank you, Ben, and thank you to the SCLC. I'm honored by this award, and I just want to emphasize that no one does this work alone, and I certainly have not. So I wanted to acknowledge again my executive board. Essence Johnson, Matthew Yarbrough, Eustacia McLeod Carter, Sharon Marshall, John Monahan, and Matt Southwell, who was with us last year. And also all the volunteers, candidates and community leaders who have dedicated their time and treasure to the Cobb County Democratic Party. So I think I'm most grateful to be a part of this community that really got this done and will continue to get this done in the coming years. And, this community, I joined, it's been 5-6 years, but when I joined, this community had been doing the work for years, long before Trump and long before the blue wave, and certainly long before I was elected as the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Party. So thank you, Ben, and thank you to the SCLC. And I look forward to continuing this work with you and with the rest of the community. So again, thank you. So part of perhaps nothing exemplifies the dramatic shift Cobb has seen more than the election of our new sheriff, Craig Owens. So Cobb County's modern day legacy was founded on white flight from Atlanta as African Americans were elected into government and the public schools were integrated. So Craig Owens recently spoke of growing up in Atlanta, being told not to cross the river into Cobb County because there was nothing but trouble waiting for him there. And Craig, you told this story as you were being sworn in as Cobb's first Black sheriff. Definitely an historic event and really signals the change in times. So Craig was a precinct commander in the Cobb County Police Department and has spent more than 30 years serving our country in the U.S. Army, the Army National Guard, and the Army Reserve. And he ran his campaign on the promise of bringing truth, trust, and transparency to the Cobb Sheriff's Department. Upon his election, he assumed command of a department with a multitude of challenges and a jail that had seen some 50 inmate deaths over the tenure of the previous sheriff. So we've invited Craig here today to discuss the current state of the Cobb County Sheriff's Department and his 100-day plan moving forward. So at this point, I'll welcome you, Sheriff Craig Owens, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, well, first and foremost, good morning, everyone. As me and Mr. Hydrick said a little earlier this morning, it's always a good day when you wake up and you're standing on top of ground versus below it. So I think we all should have something to smile for this morning. We all should have something to be happy for. You know, I hate using the old cliche, but I will. You know, there's a new sheriff in town, and we are going to do things different here in Cobb County. So first and foremost, again, it's such an honor and privilege to stand before you today as your new sheriff and allow me some time to tell you what we've done up to this point in regards to what we promised. And I want to make sure that we stay on track and deliver on those promises to the citizens of Cobb County and to you, my Democratic Party as well. So we're going to start a slideshow. I'm going to try to catch up to where we are, of what we've done up to this point, and how we're going to progress in the future. As of now, we're almost right around a 40% completion, of our 100-day plan of what we presented to everyone on the first day of office. This is with my 33rd day in office, so I think we're close to where we will meet the 100-day plan without a doubt. But I think we're on track for that with that process going forward. Our transition from the beginning was a little rough. If you didn't know, we did not have a transition at all from the prior administration. It was very limited at best. So it kind of put us behind a little bit, but we was able to overcome those obstacles. And I think we've been going straight ahead without any issues. So we're learning because we didn't get a complete transition, but we're going forward. I think we're going to be very successful. On the next slide, we're going to go right into what we started with. One of the biggest things everybody knows is COVID-19. What we're doing so far is provide our facility, making sure we are following the correct guidelines the CDC put forward, any additional guidelines the state has placed upon us as well. As you can see on the slide, we've asked for additional PPE equipment and obtained it, not only for our detainees, but for our deputies. We got one of the first agencies around to provide rapid tests at bookend for for people being detained here in Cobb County. And the reason that is we want to prevent any of those viruses or diseases to get into our facility without having a mass spread. So that was a great thing we were able to do. We also have obtained new temperature check machines, which will be more digital now as they come into our booking area before they even get into the main portion of the facility. Their temperatures will be checked as well as rapid testing will be done. And that's a lot of that's dependent upon the questionnaires that the detainees answer, how they answer their booking paperwork as well. So that's a great thing. That's something new we started here since January, since I've taken office. Another big thing that I think is real good for is, we're working with our medical community to make sure we're providing the best practices. Now, I've met our medical provider now that we currently have with his well path. At this point, they are doing everything that we're asking them to do and what their contract said they would do. So we're holding them to that now going forward. As I told everyone who has contract sheriff's office, they will be evaluated and on a, like I like to say, working test period for the next 6 months. Because if they're not providing the services that the county is paying for, not doing right by our detainees and giving them the medical and healthcare assistance they need, then they will not be there any further. So everyone knows my stance on that from our vendors, that they're all being evaluated now and determine if we're going to continue their services to Cobb County. Because again, I think anyone that comes in that facility is my responsibility. Their health and welfare is totally my responsibility. And it's my responsibility to make sure we provide the best medical and mental health care we can to them while they're in my custody, care, and control. So the way to do that is to evaluate every vendor, make sure they are doing what they say they're doing and what we're paying for them to do, and doing it in a timely fashion. Next slide. Big organization change, ladies and gentlemen. We've had the same mindset and the same work practices for 40 plus years in sheriff's office. So that's changed. And sometimes with change, people are a little resentful. Some people are scared of change. But I think as of this point, in the first 30 plus days, our change, and specifically my culture change of the integrity portion, have went over very well. And to the fact that most deputies you see now, I say, hey, as the Sam Cooke song say, change is coming. They wanted a change. They've been needing this change. And in fact, they have embraced this change positively. So an employees has embraced the change that I brought forward, and specifically some things we've done to change that culture. We have an open door policy now, which was not heard of there. In the past, you could not come into the executive offices or anywhere where the sheriffs or some of the command staff were, because they're sitting behind locked doors and you couldn't come in. So I've changed that policy immediately day one. We have an open door policy, so our employees and citizens and civilian employees who like to come in and speak or have issues, they can talk to anyone they leadership, to include the sheriff, and hopefully get a resolution to their issues. And that went over great. And I'll tell you a very quick story. One of the gentlemen there, he said he's been there working 14 years at the sheriff's office. He works at our supply warehouse. And I'm a guy, if you don't know me, I'm not a sit behind the desk type guy. I like to get around and walk around and see what people are doing. So I walked around and taken another tour on my own of the facility. I went to the supply warehouse and toured it. And after the tour was over, and he was telling me what he does and our supply chart, how it works, and et cetera. And he said, Sheriff, only West, I just want to tell you thank you. I said, for what? He said, well, this is the first time I've been in 14 years that any sheriff or command staff has been in this facility and see what we do down here. I said, really? Yeah. So I've been 14 years. He said, how many times have you seen the sheriff? He said, I only seen him once when I got hired. So I think we're changing the culture and being more part of the team atmosphere, what we're creating there. I also looked at our budget priorities. We have a outside CPA firm starting their analysis of our budget to make sure that funding in the past and funds in the past have been spent appropriately and on the right things, and making sure there is no budget improprieties that I'm walking into going forward that I have to deal with. So that firm will start on this in the next week or so to do that audit of our budget and all our bank accounts to make sure that we are all in the right practices and we're doing everything correctly. We also did a review of our staff and rank and pay structure. We was able to reallocate some funds to make sure that everyone is getting paid on an equal basis who should be, and those who were not at that level were brought up to the level they should. I think that, of course, that made employees happy and the civilians happy as well, because several of them got pay raises, brought them up to where they should have been based on their rank and time tenure there at the department. So that was something we was able to do in the first 30 days as well. We was also able to discontinue a practice of not paying some of our employees for meal breaks, meaning when you work inside a facility, you really don't get a break. You have, you can come down to the, employee dining hall and have something to eat, but if something happens, you have to go. So it's just like anywhere else, they don't really get a break. So we was able to change that policy so they don't lose their hours pay, even though they get called back to work and they still get charged the hours. So we was able to eliminate that as well. And again, that created a great working relationship inside the facility for those who stuck in that facility for 12 hours a day working, and it made them feel real good and appreciated. And we also found on this chart, we talked about a hiring board. We created an internal hiring board because there really wasn't anything in place to develop a hiring board and our recruiting strategy. So just quickly on the hiring board currently now consists of the 4 division commanders, myself and the chief deputy and the internal affairs commander. Future thinking thoughts about hiring board is to have one of our community leaders sit on the hiring board so they can see the processes, what we do, how we go through the hiring board process, and even have a little input in that as well. That's what we would do for future. But to get it started now, I had to create an internal hiring board so we have a policy and procedure in place for our hiring practices. Big thing on this, I think is real big on this chart here, is our recruiting strategy. Well, we didn't have one in the past, as far as I'm concerned. So we have gone all in about recruiting. We have 71 vacancies currently for the deputies, and we probably have like 21 vacancies for administrative positions like what we call criminal justice specialists, crime scene technicians, admin support, and etc. So we have, really piped up our recruiting efforts. You will see in the next couple of weeks, new signage going around the county saying that the Cobb Sheriff's Office is hiring, and some nice little, I just like eye-grabbing words to hopefully make people look at it and pay attention. As well as doing this locally, we also will be going to some local radio stations. We'll be doing R&B, we'll be doing hip hop, we'll be doing gospel, we'll be doing country western. I'm trying to hit a wide range of stations to get everyone involved, hopefully get some good candidates for us as well. And finally, on that aspect, we'll be doing a recruiting trip to Puerto Rico. In my former life as a division command sergeant major, I was in charge of 3 battalions in Puerto Rico. And ever since the storms came there several years ago, the islands have really been decimated. And they have a lot of guys there who are in the military, from MPs to correctional officers to other positions, and just rather civilians on the island who really want to get off the island and get back into, as they say, the mainland to work, to support their family. And a lot of those individuals are hardworking folks and can be some potential candidates. So we will set a trip up to go over there and try to do some recruiting there, as well as our local schools here. We're working with the Cobb Board of Education to get an internship with some local high schoolers to hopefully to entice them to come work for us in the future, because you can start a sheriff's office and some administrative and other positions at the age of 18. So we're looking to hire some of those as they get out of high school if they qualify as well. So we definitely are ramping up our recruitment as hard as we can to get these positions filled. And that way, I think as we fill these positions, we can provide a better service to the citizens of Cobb County and expand what we do and offer more options that in the community that we can also assist with as well. Next slide. This is the big one. I think this is what gets everyone's attention, is about our detainee health and betterment. So I've hired an outside auditor to come in to review our system procedures, which means our policies, our procedures, our customs, our actions. There will be a thorough investigation of our facility. They are scheduled to start in March. This firm that we hired was mainly consist of attorneys who have did audits throughout the United States on different facilities. It's not a hand-picked company from Georgia. We went outside, so I can say we have no one that can say that we're trying to, as people like to use the term, home cooking. So I went outside the state to find a company to come in who has no ties, who can give us an honest review of what's right, what's wrong, and what we need to change going forward. So that started there as the end of February, 1st of March, they started audit. And that audit will probably last about 3.5 weeks to almost a month to complete everything they're going to be doing for us at our facility. And we're doing that again is to make sure that, hey, we are following, or if we're not following industry standards, we will be. And if our procedures and policies are not correct, we will correct them. And as they need to be updated, we'll do those as well. So it also gets me in line to, as I stated during my campaign, of us being a triple crown rated sheriff's office, which means being accredited in our healthcare services, correctional services, administrative services. And this allows us to get on the path of being accredited. And the only way I consider us to be can be the best sheriff's office in the state is to be accredited. And currently right now, we are not accredited. I also reestablished our chaplain program, which was kind of discontinued. We have Reverend Bishop Cobb, who will be working on that program, as well as Bishop Morrison, two local religious leaders here in Cobb County will be running that program for me, getting it off the ground, as well as I have our first Hispanic chaplain as well online, and he'd be online with those three as well. So we're starting the program off with a bang. I think we got the right people to get our chaplain program up and running, and to get and to give to our detainees some spiritual support as needed, or mentorship as well. One of the other things I did talk about during my election portion was to ask GBI to review any deaths that's occurred in our facility. And I had made that official request back in January, and they received it, and they know now if we have any deaths inside our facility, they will be investigated by the GBI, and we'll no longer do internal investigations on our deaths. Only internal investigation will be on administrative procedures if they did anything administratively wrong, but everything else will be handled by the GBI, to include that as well. And finally, on this slide, I'm going to talk about our partnerships that we built with our community regarding our life skills training and education training. We've have partnered with several good companies. Wade Ford is willing to help us out. IBEW of Atlanta we're in talks with them. The Zone, and there's one more, I can't think of the name, but we have several partnerships we're working with us right now toward helping us come in and teach life skills training and education for our detainees, and make sure they can leave this facility better than they came in. This will be from some job skill training, as well as some job opportunities that some of these companies will be able to provide for them as they're coming out. That includes, from life skill, that's not only parenting skills training. We're talking about, when I say education, I'm talking about maybe that's GED, that's high school diploma, trying to help them obtain their educations so they can have a successful life, as well as some trade skills as well. That's where IBW come in. They have some apprenticeship programs but we hope we can get some of our individuals in who's qualified for, so they can go in and become welders, steel workers, or masons, things of that nature, and give them some opportunities to have good paying jobs they can sustain, and hopefully keep them from going back to doing the things they did before they came to the facility. So we got a lot of things in working in that aspect as well. We've been received very well by our community. I'm working with the Cobb Chamber as well, will be helping us with this as well. So I've been able to get some great buy-in from the community to help us in regard to our detainees, to get them a better way out of facility, and give some life skills and education training and vocational training, so they can be successful once they get out, and hopefully for them not to return to our facility. Next slide. Another big thing that we talked about the campaign was the end of the 287G program. I have ended the program, to some dislike and some like, but I felt it was the right thing to do. And that was something I said I would do during the campaign, and I've been able to honor that as well. Sheriff's Office in the past had what we call a community outreach program. I don't like the term outreach. I feel we should be an engagement. So I changed the name from outreach to engagement. And the reason I did this, I feel we should be engaging our community, not reaching out to. I want to engage them. I want to go out, talk to them, see what our community needs, see what we can do for them, and have that dialogue. You know, sometimes we don't speak enough or talk to each other enough. I don't want to change that structure. I want to have that dialogue with our community and see what our community is needing, what I can do to help them, as well as what the community can do to help us. Because I think, you know, we have to work together as a team to get where we want to be. And it's not just about me giving. The community have to give back to me as well and help me by communicating with me and telling me what they need. I also, for the first time, we've hired our Spanish-speaking community liaison. His name is Carlos Garcia. He will help hopefully build that gap that we've had in our Hispanic community. And a very quick story, I can tell you the effects we're having on that is this week we had several Hispanic families come in and report crimes. In the past, Hispanic community would not come in and report crime, nothing to the sheriff's office because of they were fear of being deported. But this week we had several come in this week with some help from Carlos and giving us information on crime that's happening in their neighborhood and asking for help so we can help them. So that's a great thing. It's already starting to see a positive change from that. Once we entered the 287G, they're starting to come forward now with issues they have in the community where they really do need help. And we were able to get them the help they need so they can have a safe community as well. We've launched a use of force policy review committee. First, we would do it from internal because the policies that we currently have are dated. So we got to first get a good policy in place that meet industry standards and that's been tested legally. And then as we do that, then we bring our civilian committees in to look at that as well. But we are working on our new use of force policy to make sure we're up to industry standards as everyone else is across the state and across the nation. We also currently are establishing our quarterly briefings. And those quarterly briefings is I want to try to do at least 4. Well, I will do, not try. I will do at least 4 a year, if not more. And those briefings are to me to have that direct dialogue. And I like to say courageous conversation with our community members. You know, I want our communities to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And I think I owe that to them. I think it's so many times it's lost in the hustle that we don't communicate with each other. And, you know, I'm not the one, again, I said earlier, I'm not going to be hiding behind the door or keep a door locked. I want to talk to my community. I want y'all to tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. And so we can fix it. And I think the more we communicate with each other, the better community we have and the safer community we have. Because now I know what your needs are. Then I can tell you what I can and can't do. Then we can figure out how we can come together and get everything we want done and accomplished to make Cobb County the safest county, if not in the state and across the nation. Next slide. I think that was it. So I am open, I guess, if you have any questions for me. Just so you know, I sent Mr. Dan an email. We also, this year, see coming out next week or so that I'm bringing having a veteran in the hiring process who has received some significant injuries from combat duty where he lost several fingers on his hand. And this young man is I like to say a stud, very, very good at what he does. No one to give him a chance, but I can tell you, even with him missing 3 fingers and quarter of a thumb, he shoots better than a lot of people who have all their facilities. And he does everything else. So I think we owe it, I think, and maybe because I'm a veteran, but I think we owe him the chance to give him a shot to come in and try. So we're going to give this disabled veteran a chance to come in and shot and give it a try and be a deputy. And I think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to wish him well and support him all the way. So I'm doing that as well. So we're reaching out through the community. I'm open for questions and things you may have. You all may see this week or the next couple of weeks. If it's not already out now, I did a couple of TV stints. One will be with Vice. Vice is a news agency that does stories and other stories and news stories and short stories. If you get a chance, take a look at it. I'm kind of homebody, so I don't let a lot of people in my home, but I allow them to come in my home to ask me 2 questions with me and my wife. And it actually went very well. And the other night, I think it was a pretty decent story on me on that. But one thing they failed to realize, and I think the Democratic Party needs to know, that we have, as you know, I think Jacqueline mentioned, we had several deaths in our facility prior to my arrival. And we have several that's still in the news now. And I was asked a couple of times to reopen some of those cases and and look back into them. So after I did some reviews, I made a decision to ask the GBI to look back into those cases for any criminal or procedural or policy violations. So I've made that request to GBI to do those things. So I've looked at it and I thought it was the right thing to do. So I've done that as well. So you may see that coming up soon. There may be something about that buzzing, but I did make the request for them to take another look at some of these cases and to give us a opinion of what they thought, if anything was wrong criminally or procedurally. And I think that would come out as well.
Thank you,
I
Craig.
think look in the chat.
Yeah.
There's a chat. I think they may just drop that Vice thing in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that as well.
Yeah, I wanted to point out the link to that Vice episode is in the chat thread, and we will go ahead and post that to our Facebook page later on this afternoon. So it's a great piece. I had a look at it yesterday, so I encourage everyone to view that. So if we're going to open it up to question and answer, and we'll give first pass to our chairmans and Governors Club members. You all have full audio and video privileges. So if you go ahead, if you have a question, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Craig.
Hi, Craig. This is Becky Arrington. How are you?
Good morning.
These are very, very exciting initiatives. And I just wanted to know, how can we as citizens help support you in those new initiatives? I know a lot of them are internal, but do you have any advice to us as far as how we could be a cheerleader for all you're doing?
Right. Well, that's a good question. And, no one can be successful without the help of the community, and I can't be. And so I'm only going to be as successful as the deputies that work for me and my community. So for me specifically I think when you have an issue with something, reaching out to me is the best route to do it, either phone, text. And sometimes people just assume something is right when they don't have the correct answer. So the way to help me is to spread the word. Hey, well, no, that's not true. This is exactly what he's doing, and help us dispel some of the rumors or myths or just outright lies sometimes people put out about you that's not true. And I think how citizens and community can help me if they tell the truth. That's not what he's doing. This is what he's doing. And then they let me know what I'm doing right and wrong. That's the best thing. And hey, we need to check in this again because we heard this, and I'll look into it. So I think just being supportive, telling our community, and for lack of better terms, some of our media what's the truth and not riding what people tell you is a rumor. I think that'll help me tremendously.
Any other questions?
Sheriff Owens, this is Dan Heydrich. How are you, Command Sergeant Major?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Absolutely vertical. I'm good. Listen, I as in the beginning, as it was with your promises and your when you were on the campaign trail, your heart for the veterans and all that went into that, I'm absolutely impressed with the list. It looks like you've been drinking from a fire hose in the first 6 weeks just trying to get all this done. I'm very proud. The veterans community out here will hear it repeatedly. So anything that you need from this end of it, we will get it done.
Thanks, Dan. I do have a question,
Sir.
Regarding I was kind of left out of that last graduation a little bit. So can you make sure that I'm up to speed on the Veterans Court, who's leading that now, and what I can do to be a more active participant from my office to give y'all support as well? And I did, as I talked to you during the thing, I will set up a different area as we get closer to reestablishing our facility, area for veterans inside the detention center as well.
Absolutely. No, well, I'll keep the PTC. We had a good graduation. As you know, District Attorney Clint Brody came and did he followed through on his justice reform and helped a couple of the guys get their records expunged. We're looking forward to his support, gathering that, but I will get you the information going forward. We're bringing hopefully 4 more out, and I really am interested in the pod generation, getting a place where veterans can be set aside where we can get to them easier for veterans assistance and so on. So yeah, I will make sure that you're on the links. I don't think we have a graduation coming up anytime soon, but I'll make sure on every Friday we have a Zoom for court because Judge Keel is the new judge. Great guy. He's not a veteran, but he too is learning our ways as we tease each other. So I will get that information back out to you, sir. And thank you very much for all your work.
Right. Well, and one other thing on it, Dan, just so you know, and it's something for everyone else to know as well. You know, our veterans have a hard time once they get in a facility because a lot of times their medical procedures or, you know, their medicines and et cetera are cut off once they get inside the facility. And then the vets have to start that whole process all over again to get back into the system to receive their benefits and their medical care. So Dan, I'm working with our current medical provider to see if we can bridge that gap and work with the VA to ensure that our veterans who are incarcerated do not lose those veteran benefits that they so rightly earned, as well as they can keep their medication coming and work in a way that the VA can help us provide that medication. The VA can provide that medication and we can receive it for them in the facility. So they still receiving the medication and things they need so they can, you know, operate efficiently every day. So we're working on that as well.
Really appreciate that. That's been one of the critical pieces. We lose touch with them, even if they're in the VTC and they get a sanction and get put back in for a while. Our biggest concern is they lose the medication that we've got them on. We get them to a certain point and then it breaks off. The other is the ability to, I guess, access to veterans so that we can, while they're incarcerated, while they're waiting, as you well know, 60 days and their benefits start to fade.
Right.
So this is going to be a great day for Cobb. I'm really, really impressed with all the things that Cobb has done. You certainly had a driving force behind that in relationship with the district attorney's office and the Veterans Court. It's going to be a great day. Thank you.
Any more questions from our governors and chair club members, our panelists? Mike, Holz Connect.
Good morning,
Morning.
and congratulations, Sheriff, on that election. I'm really proud of you and the work you've done. And you did mention at one meeting I was at that you had a lot of coworkers before the election who were strong Second Amendment supporters. A lot of Second Amendment supporters showed up in Washington with guns, showed up at the Atlanta State Capitol with guns. I worry that they're going to show up at your office or the county commissioner office with guns. In the U.S. military, from the top down, they're checking social media and trying to find out if there are people who should not be in the military. Will you go along with what the United States military is doing and checking on people in your department whose views on the Second Amendment might be a little excessive?
Well, to answer that question, it is a good question. But so, you know, we continuously, since I've been in office and one of my directives was, we continuously check our employees' Facebook pages, their social media sites, making sure they're not putting anything out there that's inappropriate or saying anything that would dishonor our office, the sheriff's office, as well as anything that may lead to being, you know, a criminal act. So we constantly check those Facebook pages and social media outlets of our employees to ensure that they are governing themselves appropriately. So I think we are on the same path to a certain extent with the military doing. But we've been doing that since I got in office in January.
Way to go. Proud of you.
And I think we have time for one more question. I know, Craig, you have another commitment at 11. So is there another question from the panel? Great. Okay. I wanted to.
There's one in the chat.
Yeah, one in the chat thread from Melanie Valentine. She says, as a coordinator of the Cobb Mental Health Court, she's received reports from multiple participants that they've had difficulty receiving their medications while incarcerated. Is there a way that the process could be more efficient so their mental health doesn't decline while in custody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I responded back to her. Send me some specifics of what she's actually talking and I can look into it. This is the first that I heard of that. Excuse me, but we'll definitely look into it and see if there's some process that need to be changed to speed up the process to detainees getting their medicine in a timely fashion.
Okay. And then another comment to a suggestion to help support Sheriff Owens. Express support for the change to no longer support 287G and send letters to the editor at the MDJ. They've published several negative letters and have not printed any of the letters supporting Sheriff Owens' decision. We need to send more so that they see there is more support for the decision and may finally publish at least a more representative sample of the community's feedback on the 287G program.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how many?
I think that's good.
Okay, and then one last question. How have things changed in terms of ease of access to attorneys and family members for the people, for the inmates at the jail?
Well, since I've taken office, we've made that process a lot less, as I like to say, busier. In layman terms, it's a lot simpler for them to get in there and see them. Not only have I made it simpler for the attorneys to come in and see their clients, we've also reopened up visitation, which was closed. I felt the right thing to do is to have families come in and visit their loved ones who are detained here, even though it's not a face-to-face visit. It's a webinar type visit. They come to our visitor center, they sit down, we're bringing their loved one to the other side, and they can see them and talk to them. That was discontinued for months. So I think, what better way to ease some tension with somebody detained so they can talk to the loved one. So we've opened that up. We made sure that the attorney-client privileges has been reestablished in a quicker form, so they don't have to go through so much to talk to their clients in a timely fashion. So we've already acted upon those things, and I think right now it's going very well, and we got positive support from the families who have loved ones there, as well as from the attorneys who have clients in our facility.
Well, great. We thank you for your time today, Craig, and wish you luck, and just let us know how we can help in the future with all these important improvements and progress with respect to the Sheriff's Department. So thank you.
Cool.
Thank you so very much. Now, again, I thank everyone. It's such an honor and privilege to stand before you today as your sheriff. I'm truly humbled. Thank you for your support, for you all helping me get here. I wouldn't have got here without your support. And I tell my deputies and everything, it's a privilege to be your sheriff, and I'll never do anything to dishonor this office or this uniform that I wear every day. So please trust and believe that. And I'm working for you to make Cobb County the best sheriff's office in the state of Georgia, if not the nation. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Craig. So we're going to move on now. We'll bring up Erick Allen, Representative Erick Allen. Erick, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, great. Erick is the chair of the Cobb Legislative Delegation, and we've invited him here today to give us a legislative update. Let us know what's going on down under the Gold Dome. So I'll hand it over to you, Erick.
Thank you, Jackie. And before I start, I just want to say how impressive that presentation was from Sheriff Owens. I think the work that he's doing surely proves that the decision that Cobb County made in November was the right one. It looks like he's been really busy, but it's the right one. Piece of information he gave was, around the 287G program. The testament that with the outreach to the Hispanic community has already created a dialogue for them to feel comfortable to report crimes is amazing. There are so many positives that can come out of that by that community having that relationship with law enforcement. It's just impressive. So I think we should all be congratulating him, and as it's been said in the chat, really supporting the great work that he's doing. So with that, for the delegation update, we do have a new biennium with new leadership within the Cobb delegation. It's a 21-member delegation, and I have been honored and lucky to be elected chair of the delegation for this biennium. Terry Nulowitz, who represents Smyrna, is vice chair, and Mary Frances Williams in Marietta primarily is secretary. So we have a new leadership team, and I'm excited about the work that we're talking about doing and really starting to implement. One of the things that I wanted to do differently is to have more of a dialogue with all of our county partners, including the public. You know, traditionally the delegation is not met on a regular cadence, so it's not as widely known when groups are going to meet. And I use the example because I also sit on the Fulton County delegation and the City of Atlanta delegation because of the way my district straddles Fulton and Cobb. The Fulton and Atlanta delegations meet weekly. And I think that's a positive thing. Now, I'm not saying that Cobb is going to start meeting weekly. We're going to start off with bi-weekly, but I think it's important to start building those relationships with our county partners as we start to build those relationships with all of the newly elected officials in Cobb County. As it was said earlier, we have a new sheriff, we have a new chair, we have a new DA, court clerk. There's a lot of new faces and new ideas that I think we need to be collaborating with and talking through. So look for more information on that as we start to have these meetings. We had our first one yesterday where we had two presenters. The first was Karen Hayes from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, who discussed the issue of sterigenics and the new permit that EPD is working on. This past week, there were two public hearings on the new permit for sterigenics. The public comment period is open until February 25th. So I encourage anyone that is active and interested in that issue to go out to the EPD website, make sure you post your comments, your questions, so that we can make sure that we have the right controls in place through the permitting process with sterigenics. And the other presenter was Dr. Janet Memark, who's head of Cobb Douglas Public Health, who gave the delegation an update on COVID and the response to COVID from Cobb County. So if you want to see the replay of that, another thing that's been done, we've broadcasted that out to Facebook. Right now, there's a link to it on my personal page and my house page on Facebook. We are also in the process of creating a Facebook page for the Cobb delegation. So going forward, we'll have a place to post this information and stream these meetings so that the general public can be aware. The other thing before I get into legislative stuff is I just want to once again thank all of those that ran for legislative offices this past year. I don't think we had one seat that was uncontested, and we had a great slate of candidates that were on the ballot. So I appreciate all the work that they did. I don't want to run down the name because I'm sure I'll miss one or two, but I do want to thank all of those that put themselves forward to run in 2020, and hopefully we'll see them again in the future. So at the Capitol, we've already completed 16 of our 40 days of legislative session. So, I mean, if you think about it, we're almost halfway done, and there's been a lot of activity in committee, but not a lot of stuff that's been brought to the floor for a vote. The two most significant things that have passed out of at least the is the budget, the amended 2021 budget, as well as an immunity bill. And I'll talk about each of those separately. The budget has passed the House, the Senate, and is on to the governor's desk for the amended budget. And the highlights of the 2021 amended budget is $654 million was able to be put back into the budget. So those are additional revenues that weren't expected, that have come in, that have now been able to go back into some of the cuts that were made to the original 2021 budget. If you remember, when we got back in session in June, originally they were looking at a 14% cut across the board. It ended up being about an 11% cut to the budget. Well, this $650 million represents about a 2.5% addition back into the budget. One of the biggest things that went to, 567 million of it, went to K-12 education. And that's about 60% of the $1 billion cut education took back in June. So over half of that has been able to be restored because of the revenue increase. So that's in the budget. And part of that is includes a $1,000 raise for teachers and school-based employees. So that's a very positive move, especially considering the stress and the workload that our teachers are under currently. As far as health, one of the highlights from the budget is from federal funds. There's been $1.04 billion that have gone directly to the Georgia Department of Health to respond to the COVID crisis. And that's been allocated in a lot of different ways, but that did have to be authorized through the budget. So those are things that I think are the big items that went back in. There's a lot of other things where additional monies were added, but the 5.67 million, 567 million for education is a huge lift for our schools after taking a little bit over $1 billion hit in last year. The other piece of legislation I talked about that has been moved through the House, not necessarily passed in the Senate yet, I don't believe, but is the business immunity bill. And if you recall back in June, once again, the House and Senate passed a measure to provide blanket immunity to small businesses. That was extended in the House, and it was done so almost primarily down party lines. And I wanted to kind of pause again to explain why the bill is not necessarily one needed or a good bill for workers and working families in Georgia, which is why majority of Democrats opposed it. There is nothing in that immunity bill that provides protections to employees. Working families, the frontline employees, are the ones in the most risk in this pandemic, and they deserve to have a little bit more protections. We've heard of food processing plants, placing bets and wagers on who's going to catch COVID and how many cases they would have. There's just a lot of gross negligence and irresponsibility. And in my personal opinion, by providing an organization or a company with a blanket immunity, you encourage them not to do the things and everything within their control to provide a safe environment for those that have to go to work. So it did pass. I'm pretty sure it'll pass in the Senate and continue through 2021. But it is one of those situations that we really have to keep an eye on. So what's moving through committee? And there's quite a few things that I wrote down, and I want to make sure we have a chance to put out there, and then I'll take some questions. Right now, one of the hot topics is the online sports betting bill, HB 86. It was passed out of committee, but then recommitted back to committee to have some amendments introduced. And those amendments, if you haven't been following the sports betting bill, it's basically your FanDuel, DraftKings, those types of platforms that would be legalized in Georgia and run through the lottery. There's a House version and a Senate version. The main differences between the two is the House version does not allow credit cards to be used, only debit cards, and it does not include amateur or college sports. The Senate bill does allow credit cards, does allow college sports. So I'm sure there'll be some reconciliation between the two. The amendments, two amendments important that we want to stay focused on as a group, especially as the Cobb Dems and the Democratic Caucus, is the two amendments on the House side is for minority participation. That one I believe is going to move forward in some form, and also needs-based hope. The proceeds right now, as the bill is drafted, would go into the general hope funds. We are working to get language in there that would create more of a needs-based focus to provide these funds to go to households. I can't remember the exact number, but who make less than the threshold of poverty, so that they would have access to hope on a needs-based scenario. So those are two things that are moving through with the sports betting. It is a completely separate piece of legislation than the casino and the horse racing legislation. I'm sure those will start moving soon at some point. But the sports betting bill, when you see that being reported on, it's not inclusive of casinos or the pari-mutuel sports betting, the horse racing. The other hot topic, especially last week, and there was a lot of coverage about it, was the hospital visitation bill. There's one that's been heard in committee, but there's a couple that are bubbling up out there that would basically prohibit organizations from hospitals and long-term care facilities, we'll say organizations, from banning visitors. It would allow for 2 caregivers to be designated by the individual in care to allow them to visit up to 2 hours a day. There's some debate on both sides of that issue, but it is something that's moving through committee, and I think it's going to get some more refinement before we vote on a final passage. It is in one of the committees that I sit on, so you can follow my Facebook page or newsletters to get updates on that, but I think it's going to be a very important issue going forward. There's also a ton of election bills, and this is something that should concern everybody on this call, because it is a reaction to non-problem, and we want to make sure we're staying on top of it. And there's so many bills that were expected that the speaker created a special committee on election integrity for the House. It already has 29 bills in it. So all of these bills are going to start moving through. There are bills around ID. You probably heard about those, requiring 2 forms of ID for a mail-in ballot. There's a legislation around cutting off vote by mail 10 days prior to the election, eliminating drop boxes. And there's also a House bill that would prohibit the change of an early voting location within 60 days of an election, which is a direct response to the early voting location in West Cobb being closed so those workers could move to South Cobb this past runoff election. So there's a lot of stuff out there around elections. So I've talked with Jackie earlier this week, and I'll get more information out, but I do want to announce on this call that on the 23rd of this month, February 23rd at 7 p.m., we will have a joint Zoom meeting with the Cobb Democrats, Cobb delegation, and Fair Fight to give everybody a very detailed briefing of all of these election bills and what the call to actions need to be. These are the bills that we need to be very, very vigilant about, because it is the modern suppression tactics that are coming in. And we have to be very mindful that these are not bills that are going to help Democrats. They are done specifically to make it harder for Democrats to vote and for Democrats to win. So we need to be very, very vigilant about these bills. So February 23rd, 7 p.m., we'll send out some information. I'll continue to work with Jackie and the executive board to get that planned. Another election-related bill that I want to bring up is House Bill 101. And this is a bill that would eliminate the disenfranchisement of voters returning from prison. As returning citizens come back and they paid their debt, we have to acknowledge the draconian tactic of not allowing them to fully participate back in their community. And House Bill 101 would restore that. So I think that's a very, very positive bill. Another dangerous bill that series of bills that are coming out, but House Bill 372 is one in particular. But there's a lot of dialogue around gender. And this one particularly sets up gender boards in theory, and would disqualify anyone from playing in a sport not with their birth assigned gender. And this is just one of many that are going to start to percolate up as the gender conversation ignites again at the Capitol. So those are some of the highlights. Just wanted to run through those really quick. And I know there are a couple of questions that have come in. I missed some of them. There was one that asked if the teacher $1,000 was a bonus or a raise. The teachers and school-based employees are a raise. So that's $1,000 raise. There's also in the budget $1,000 one-time bonus for state employees who make under $80,000, I believe. Double check. Yep. It's a one-time state employees who make less than $80,000, a one-time salary supplement of $1,000. So it's a bonus for state employees, $1,000 raise for teachers. I think you're on mute, Jackie.
Any other questions from the panel here for Eric, Becky?
Thank you, Eric, for all you're doing. I haven't seen any legislation drop yet, and you may know of something. If you don't, maybe this is something that the Cobb delegation would like to take on. It has to do with voting, in particular, a proposal surrounding hand recount audits randomly. I think all of us felt fabulous in terms of the Dominion voting versus the hand counts, and we saw that those machines were up to snuff. And I would like to see legislation propose that at every general election, that there's a random election chosen, the hand count.
I don't know in particular if that's been introduced, but there's even legislation out there to basically almost repeal HB 316 that was passed down party line to eliminate the voting machines. So all of a sudden, all those that went to the well and voted against hand-marked paper ballots are saying, well, maybe we need hand-marked paper ballots so we can control this a little bit more. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's on the table, and that's why I think Fair Fight is a good vehicle for us to use to really vet all of those out and kind of talk about and to get in lockstep. I mean, they have the mobilization ability to fight these, and we need to make sure we're in lockstep with some of these advocacy groups that are doing the work. But thank you for that, Becky.
Thank you.
I don't know if you all were following the impeachment hearings, but Cobb County got mentioned in the defense arguments, along with Fulton County. So we are definitely at the forefront in the spotlight for this whole Stop the Steal movement. And we're basically on the front lines for defending democracy, which is really what this assault on our voting rights is all about. So.
Jackie?
Yes.
Ben Williams, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, Eric, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Dr. Williams.
Yeah, really appreciate what you're doing in order to connect us more with our state delegation. Okay, so really appreciate that. Looking forward to those interactions. Could you comment, because as I understand it, in spite of the resistance, dollars have been allocated to come to states, in that whole COVID relief package. Okay. Comment on what is in there that will help folk who are subject to evictions. And also funds that may be in there to assist landlords. Would you do that?
Thank you for that question. I'm glad you asked it both ways, because there's always a lot of conversation about evictions, and I'm extremely sensitive to that. But on the other side of every eviction is also someone who holds a note on that property. So there's a lot of moving pieces on this. There has been funds given, not necessarily to the state, but also to certain local jurisdictions to assist in some of that. And I know the commissioner, Cobb County has received, I believe it's 21 million in a fund. And I think the commissioners are working through now how to get that on the ground through different organizations. They can't disperse it direct to individuals in the county. They have to work through a nonprofit or other entities. And I know they're working on that. So I don't want to speak to the work of the commission, but they do have the funds and they're working through that process.
We have a question in the chat thread that's from Amanda Brown. She's been following the hospital visitation bill. Is there any chance, rather than rigid policy, the legislature will put the onus on hospitals and nursing homes to clear visitor restrictions through CDC or the State Department of Public Health?
Yeah, one of the, when we heard that in committee, I spoke personally on some of the issues. As most know, I've spent a lot of my career in hospitals on the non-delivery side, on the administration side. And I think that there's going to have to be some continued negotiation to make this bill workable. I would personally argue that it's not needed. And what I mean by that is, right now, there are other layers of governance that restrict that prior to you get to state law. There are licensing entities like CMS, Centers for Medicaid Services. There's the CDC. There's Health and Human Services. There's a lot of different boxes that have to be checked first. What this bill would do, two issues. One, it doesn't even go in effect until July of 2021. And I think we're all hopeful that in July of 2021, we're going to be in a different place than we are now. And it may not even address the real issue in that stance. The other issue is that I firmly believe the pendulum is swinging too far the way the legislation is currently written. To not give a tool to hospitals or facilities to respond to a health crisis, I think is problematic. Because what this law would do is say, under no circumstances could you bar these family members from coming in to visit. And I sympathize. I mean, I spent 6 years good Lord, 6 days at Piedmont Hospital 3.5 months ago because of a small bowel blockage. And I couldn't see my wife, couldn't see my daughter, couldn't see anybody. I just sat in that room by myself looking at a TV for 6 days. I empathize, and I know that it's a real issue. I also think about when I had my previous surgeries in 2010, my wife was just as much a part of my caregiving team as any nurse or doctor that was in the hospital. However, if there is a medical emergency in a facility and a facility needs to close their doors for 3 to 5 days to contain and mitigate that risk, they need to have the tools to do so. And by creating a law like this, I think you mitigate that. You eliminate the ability for the hospital to respond. And I'm not just talking about COVID. If this bill as written were to become law, 5 years down the road, there could be a measles or a chickenpox outbreak at a hospital on a children's unit. And the hospital would have no mechanism to close that hospital down to visitors, isolate the individuals that are infected, sterilize and clean, which could take 2 to 3 days. You would totally eliminate that ability of them to do that. So I think there's work to be done. I think we'll get to a place. I think this will pass. I don't see any way that we don't take some type of action, but I think right now it's just in that process of refining itself to make sure that the right bill gets voted on. I'm sorry, that was a really long answer for what you asked, but I want to make sure we put all of that, put all that out there.
Right. So the next question we have in the queue is there's a bill in the Senate Bill 42, that would eliminate discipline from school rankings formula, which would then hide racial disparities in discipline that contribute to the school to prison pipeline. Any idea if there is any similar move in the House?
There is usually when the majority party is working on things like this, there's always a backup plan. So I wouldn't say there's not any companion bill, if you will, that's percolating in the House. I don't think that 42 has had a hearing yet in the Senate, but I agree that we've got to be very vigilant on anything that will hide the critical data and discipline. I know I've worked with Tanya and her sorority, Tanya Robinson and her sorority and other groups on the disparity of suspensions and expulsions in schools. It is heavily tilted toward Black and brown kids. And anything that is a move to hide that data, to me is it's inappropriate. If anything, we need to do more to make that more transparent. It took, I asked for that information on behalf of a couple of different organizations 2 years ago, and it literally took me 18 months to extract that information from Cobb County schools. So anything to make that more difficult is not appropriate.
Any statewide legislation that addresses the issue of homelessness?
I would have to check. I know Representative Park Cannon, that's an issue she's focused on quite a bit over her career at the legislature. She's mentioned some things. I don't know if there's any legislation introduced, but I can find that answer for you.
All right, are there any more questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Eric.
Jackie?
And yes, Ben?
I'm sorry, I was waiting to give everybody else a chance before I came back in.
Okay.
Just one other question. Eric, the Georgia Justice Project has been consistent in terms of trying to get legislation to move beyond restrictions to expungements. Okay. And even though, we conflate it as being the same thing, it in fact is not. Okay. And one of the pieces was at least trying to get the legislature to put into the current restrictions bill the inclusion of nonviolent felonies. Okay, Ben Williams passed a bad check when he was 29 years old. He is now way up, family life, bing, bing, bing. And in Georgia, that action continues to follow him. Okay. Anything that you know about, in that particular area that would give some more thrust to folk trying to clear up their records.
Yeah, so this is a constant conversation that we have. I've met with Georgia Justice Project in the offices a couple of times to look at how we put this legislation forward. I will tell you the House Democratic Caucus is working on a full justice package that does include some of those elements in it, looking at further restrictions. House Bill 101 that I talked about is part of that package, but we will be firming that package up and presenting that legislation shortly. So yes, all of that is being looked at. And it's one of those things, if you look at, this year, another one of the special committees the speaker created. Now, I don't get excited because he created these committees because we know who still controls them. But there is a special committee on access to the civil justice system. And that all of these justice bills will be funneled through that committee. I find it quite interesting that the chair of that committee is also the majority whip, who found himself indicted for a crime himself a couple of weeks ago, but that's a different topic. But we will see a lot of those bills percolate through there, Ben. And so keep in contact. We'll try to get as much of that out as we can. I know the House Democratic Caucus will also be presenting some updates on that, as well as the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. I am the vice chair of the policy committee for the Legislative Black Caucus, and we're also following a lot of these bills and putting information out about it. Thank you.
All right. So if there are any other questions, we're going to wrap this up. All right. So thank you, Eric, and we will look forward to more information on that joint event for voting rights legislation on February 23rd. So as soon as we get more information on that, we'll be posting that and promoting that and getting that information out. So thank you. And well, we thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to hearing more from the delegation as the session progresses.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up. Our next Donuts with Democrats is on March 13th. And we are still lining up our featured guest speakers. We hope to hear from Flynn Brody at that March Donuts. So keep an eye out for that information as well. And then I'm going to have you, Essence, talk to them about some of our upcoming table talk sessions.
All right. Well, again, good morning, all that's on this call and listening. We had our first installation of Table Talk Thursdays with Monica Delancey. So if you weren't able to watch, please do. Forgive me for cutting off because lovely loss of power at the end, but it was a great conversation with Monica Delancey and all the work that she's doing within our community. On the February 25th, we have the president of the Georgia NAACP, James Woodall, that will be joining us at 8 p.m. on February 25th. And then on March 11th, we have Dan Heydrich, who has been on this call at 7 p.m. For Table Talk Thursdays. And we are still lining up for those installations. They're 30 minutes to an hour of just getting to know what's going on throughout Cobb County, throughout the state of Georgia, with local community leaders and advocates that are working on the ground, where we could listen, learn, and potentially have an opportunity to help. So we're really excited to roll these out.
Great, thank you, Essence. And in closing, I want to encourage you all to sign up for our newsletter. You can do that by going to our webpage, cobbdemocrats.org, and hitting the, I think it says sign me up or sign up button to get our monthly newsletters that will contain all the information about upcoming events and some of the topics we've discussed here today. Now, one thing I have to say with that newsletter, it goes out through MailChimp. A lot of times that ends up in your bulk promotional spam folder. So please look for it there. And when you find it there, move it over to your inbox. And that should solve the problem for future editions that they would land in your inbox. Other than that, it's the mysteries of MailChimp. I just don't know what to say. But we do our best to put that information out there. Of course, you can follow us on social media as well, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to get that information also. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us here this morning, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. And we wish you all a happy Valentine's Day and a great weekend. All right, thank you.